When the unexpected happens at mediation, Crazy Stories Part 2, part of the series Mediating with or Without Attorneys with Tye Bourdony. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And Tye Bourdony, full-time mediator and primary mediation trainer in Central Florida.
All right, good to see you again, Tye. Thanks so much for reappearing as we talk about the next part of this, what happens that's unexpected at mediations. And so this is 2022, everybody, and we've all successfully gone into the new year. So just wanted to welcome everybody back as we go back in with Tye. And this is a follow-up to a talk we had a few months ago when I was out in Warsaw with Natalia. And so we wanted to piggyback off that and continue talking about some more crazy things that tend to happen at mediations in ways that are unexpected. And so, Tye, since you are the longest serving mediator amongst, so I know you've seen a whole lot of different crazy things. But can you go ahead and start off with, a very common thing that sometimes happens that's unexpected at mediations?
Common unexpected things, I think, might be, something like common unexpected. That's the thing about unexpected. You just never know what's going to happen, of course, right? But something that happens more often than not, then I think would be something like when one party it tries to force or pressure another party to agreeing to what it is that they want by telling them and the mediator, if they don't agree, I will report this, or I will let somebody know about this thing that happened. And in essence, putting pressure on a party to agree with them when they potentially might not agree by, some means of extortion, so to speak, right? And as a mediator, if you're not familiar with that issue, the first time it happened to me, it hadn't happened to me before, and I didn't remember going over it in mediation certification class, so to speak. And so I was in uncharted territory, and I proceeded. In essence, I was taking that message over. And I shouldn't have been taking that message over, right? Because one of the most important tenets of mediation is a party's right to self-determination. You're not supposed to be unduly pressured, especially by your mediator, to enter into an agreement if you're not comfortable with that agreement. But often enough, parties will say, if you don't do X, if you don't agree, if I don't get what I want, I'm going to go to the authorities. I'm going to do this. I'm going to let so-and-so know. And so now when it happens, because that does happen from time to time, I'm able to nicely let the parties know, I'm really sorry, but I'm really not going to be able to take that message over like that. And I'll tell them why. And it's easier when they have an attorney, because the attorney will, kind of let them know, look, we're not going to be able to do that. But that happens a lot. Have you guys seen that?
Oh, yes, we have. And also, please remember that sometimes you do have a joint mediation session. People are not in the caucus rooms, and this thing is being directly put onto the table and everybody sees it. And what it can be tax evasion. It can be something like something that has not been reported, whereas it should have been. It can be this is a very Polish specialty. I think this is like forging signatures. This is like you forge, when we were selling the car, you forge my signature. It's still in the registration office. I can still trace it down, and you'll have so many different difficulties because of that. Yes, people do that. And this is up to mediator to, first of all, extinguish the potential conflict arising out of that, but also handle the situation that brings, let us say, certain bitterness and certain disappointment in everybody that is hearing about this particular story. Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This whole issue of extortion or, going against people's right to self-determine the outcome of a mediation agreement is very important because it impacts both the mediator and the parties. And so, for all the mediation parties out there, just know that this is one of the big no-nos, okay, for mediation. You can't place undue pressure, including criminal pressure, okay, or the threat of something nefarious happening to somebody else in order to get your way, to get them to sign off on some document. That person who's being forced to go through that is not doing it out of their own will. They're doing it because of a threat. Now, and this gets a little gray in some scenarios. A person may make a rational decision in order to avoid pain, in order to avoid a potentially negative legal outcome. They may make a rational decision to go ahead and sign off, but that's again going to be their choice and their will at play. And so, as good mediators, we need to make sure that we're balancing these competing interests and make sure that people's rights are being protected, and that they're the ones who are choosing to agree and enter into a settlement negotiation that they approve of. And this could be in, Natalia brought up tax evasion, for example, right? Or signatures. This could impact anything and everything. But anyway, that's just one example of something that's unexpected that happens sometimes. Let me bring up another issue, and that is when you are asked as a mediator to be the bearer of bad news. Sometimes that's unexpected. You bring these folks together, you're trying to help them settle their case, and then all of a sudden, you find yourself in the middle. Well, that's where you always are. You find yourself in the middle having to convey some potentially explosive news from one side to the other. Ty, you want to go into that a little bit and what you've experienced?
Yeah, that I have been put in really, really awkward positions because no one wanted to be the one to have to say what the issue was. I've been asked by counsel and their party to go let the other party know, for instance, that a child was not their biological child, or that someone was having an affair, or that someone had some kind of sexual relationship with a family member. And that's just awkward. That's really, really awkward. When you have to, how do you do that? Because they don't want to do it either. And so sometimes a mediator finds themselves in a place where they are the one that one way or another, we're always taking bad news or unwelcome news to the other side. And so we have to be sensitive, but also have the conviction to go ahead and do it in a compassionate way to help the parties move forward, because the issues are what the issues are sometimes. But it also presents potential problems, because when you're told, imagine you're a party to a mediation and you're trying to come to agreement on something, and then some explosive surprise news that you have not been that you weren't aware of and that you didn't expect to hear is relayed to you. you know, emotions take hold, and it then can someone imagine if I just told you that your child is not your biological child, a child that you've been bringing up for years. I can imagine it puts you in a very weird state of mind, right? And so then, you know, in this one instance that I'm recalling, the person got distraught. You know, I mean, can you imagine? I love my children dearly. What might this do? And are they really then able to make a good decision in that moment with respect to what we're talking about and what's on the table? Like, would they still have a child support obligation to that child because that child was born during the course of the marriage? Would, you know, how are they gonna, I recall in this instance, immediately this individual then wanted nothing to do with that child or anybody. uh but given time, would they feel differently? Do they need to talk to someone? It just can be very, 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 very awkward. And so the mediator, in that moment, you have to read the room. What's going on? Can we continue? Where do I go from here? You know, how best do we, you know, move on with respect to the business at hand? It just throws a huge wrench. The more emotional and the more just out of left field. And you can't make this stuff up in family mediation, especially in any mediation. But family mediation can get really personal, and people do really weird things, and that's why they wind up getting divorced. And here you are as the mediator, and you're the one who's got to take the news over. It can be very, really, really tough. Really. How about you guys? Have you been in situations like that?
Yeah, the common point for all of that will be that this is something emotional, and the party revealing that is also playing on other parties' emotions. And this is also what makes it difficult, because sometimes it also leaves you as a mediator in a very uncomfortable position, actually making you go outside of your own comfort zone. And these are the things that you are comfortable with, because it's like, again, morals. When someone is revealing that they slept with the brother of their husband, or someone is revealing that they did something really ugly to someone in the family. Of course, sometimes you ask yourself, what's the reason someone is revealing that just now? Or sometimes it's also the question of whether it's going to be bringing any good into the mediation, into these people's lives, because some of those arguments are like those blackmailing. It's turning someone's lives over, and in a really unwanted way. However, when it comes again to mediator, getting off your comfort zone is also when you need to stay impartial, where people bring to mediation things that you don't expect, as our title says, but they are also out of the blue, let us say. Someone is starting to talk about things that you wouldn't expect, like ghosts, or some unexpected weird circumstances, or expresses really extreme political views or something else, and wishing to get your consent, get your approval for that. Again, you as a mediator, despite of the fact whether you strongly agree or strongly disagree with this certain position, you need to stay impartial and let the mediation go on. And how do you do that? You are just a human being. Sometimes you want to laugh. Sometimes you want to tell someone they are wrong, but then you are taking a position, and that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. So
Well
this is
said.
the. Go ahead and Ty.
No, I was just, you said that very, very well. I would
Yeah,
agree.
so this is why these kind of things tends to be a conversation to two different audiences. One of them is to the mediator, the other one is to the parties. So I think to the parties, what they need to understand is that, like Natalia said, mediators are human. And but being a mediator doesn't mean that we somehow put aside our proclivities as humans, our tendencies to see humor in things, our own natural internal prejudices and biases, because again, we're human. But I think being a good mediator is not passing judgment on the parties who come before us, because every single person is in a unique place in their life, especially in family law, right? And sometimes if we are to think that, well, what a person's going through, that we would never find ourselves, well, a lot of times we do find ourselves in that exact same situation. Okay. Whether it deals with our kids or our marriages or whatever else. And so I think to any potential party out there who's going to be going to mediation and who's going to be working things out with the opposition, they need to just remember that there's nothing really that you can say that could shock us as a mediator, because most likely we've kind of heard it all. But and at the same time, I guess that should give you a little bit of comfort to know that, well, a good mediator is not going to judge you, but they are going to, take the information and potentially help you reframe, the ideas so that you can then use that information to make better decisions, or try to reach agreements that will make sense to the other side. So that's one audience, right? When it comes to how to view the mediator in their comfort zone. The other audience is the mediators themselves. So to all the mediators out there, look, we this is just a learning point for all of us. We have to do a better job of making sure that our clients feel comfortable, that they can open up to us about anything. That if they have some perceived weird quirk or extreme political views, quote unquote, they can still share it if it's relevant. And then we are able to take it in, filter it, deal with it, and help them bring that information to the other side so that they can reach an agreement. Because at the end of the day, what do we all want as mediators? We want our parties, our clients to reach settlement. Okay. And we'll care on you, we'll love you. But at the end of the day, once your case is over and it's settled, we've reached our goal because that was it. Okay. And then we can move on to the next case. And so I think good mediators, that's what they're passionate about, is what can I do today to get you to reach a settlement agreement and move on with your lives in a way that's peaceful and that's not filled with brokenness? What can I do to help foster that? Anyway, just a little preaching there.
Actually,
But go ahead,
Mac,
Tom.
let me add to that. And from the mediator's perspective.
Yeah.
So, we're doing a lot of things at any given time when we're mediating with parties. And so let's assume we're in the caucus, we're separate, I'm with one of the parties. I've right now I'm thinking of an instance. You said extreme political views, right? And so I'm thinking of an instance in which I was in with one of the parties. The party was represented, right? And every time I would kind of go back, because sometimes when you're mediating in caucus, it may take a little while. And so the other parties, if you didn't give them homework or if they're not working on something, they're having discussions. Sometimes they're private discussions and what have you. And so as you jump back in or in the context of being in there with them, you will hear, they will tell you exactly how they feel, exactly what they're thinking, because they're trusting you, right? And so when I have been in situations where I have heard very extreme political views that I would be on the opposite spectrum of, but in that moment, in that mediation, they can't get any idea that I don't think they can't know what I'm thinking at all. On the contrary, if they had to guess, they might think he might agree with me, just because when I'm in mediation, you mentioned ghosts, Natalia. If you believe in ghosts, I believe in ghosts. If you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. If you're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, I'm a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim. My point is, I think it's important for the mediator to kind of mirror what you're getting from the parties, and so that they trust you. So they should never know. Now could be times when something's funny, laugh. If it's funny, sometimes if the parties are laughing, they're not arguing, it's good for mediation. But we have to just know when to keep a poker face, when to, like, we can't go, oh my gosh, we have to know how to keep ourselves. Sometimes it has to be very even keel, but sometimes we have to give them the impression, I totally understand. Sure, no, I see that. Now, if I say I totally understand, oh, I see what you're saying, I'm not agreeing with you, but you're thinking, then I'm agreeing with you. So the mediator has to be in a place where they can still validate the party, even if they disagree with them. And it's a nuanced thing that comes with practice, but that's our mediator's role. And unless we're hearing something that breaks confidentiality, or for some reason something happened that mediation had stopped, which does not happen a lot, we have to let them think that we don't disagree with them, so to speak. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And before we start drawing things to a close, wanted to just let it be a free for all for now on anything else, guys, that we've seen that were unexpected. Like, for example, we were talking before the video started recording about people who might have been undressing themselves in the middle of a mediation. Like, that came out of nowhere, right?
You can't
And
just say that and now we're gonna close out. That's gonna have to be part 3. That and weapons and mediation.
Yeah, exactly. No, no, but I mean, we have a couple minutes. I mean, so what other things are, because when people see in the title crazy stories, they're expecting crazy stories. So I have one, and that is, some years ago I was mediating, and parties did bring weapons.
Mhm.
Both spouses brought a weapon, and I
What kind of weapon,
remember,
Mac?
huh?
What kind of weapons?
Oh, so they're both. I live in Texas, so of course
Gotcha.
we tend to have very, you know, I guess, liberal gun laws, which is a irony being in Texas. And I remember being in the middle of a mediation and things getting pretty heated, and I remember seeing a pistol in the back belt of one of the individuals,
Hmm.
and so that shouldn't have been in the building. Okay.
Okay.
In fact, even though we have, concealed carry and different things like that in our state, businesses still have a right to determine who can bring what. And on the building that I was at, right there on the sign, on the front of the building, there's a sign that says you can't bring a weapon in. Anyway, but I remember that guns were one of the things we were debating
Sure.
in this divorce case to split up. But the fact that both sides were bringing weapons, and I can't confirm that the other side had a weapon, but I believe that they did. The very fact that we're talking about weapons and people are bringing in weapons, and this is a divorce case that's very emotional, it's probably not a good idea,
Yeah.
right? And so, I guess to all the parties out there, leave your weapons at home, okay?
Leave your weapons.
If it's coming down to you feeling the need to have a weapon to protect yourself when you go into mediation, we have bigger problems,
Yeah.
right? Really. It's so that's just my 2 cents. But what about you guys?
Natalia?
I am the one who will not have examples like bringing guns to mediations. The only thing that can happen can be a knife, maybe. But this actually didn't happen to me. But what happens to me as a mediator, and I need to be prepared for that, is people really presenting weird behaviors. And then you really are sometimes stunned, sometimes you want to react, and sometimes you just don't know how and you wish to ignore what's happening. And to some lighter examples, maybe, like a man who, during the mediation, took off his shoe and started sniffing it. And that had absolutely nothing to do with the topic of the mediation. That was a mediation in person. And he then extended his hand with the shoe to his wife so that she can sniff it. And that was absolutely embarrassing to everybody.
Did she
And
sniff it? I'm sorry.
she didn't actually, but she felt embarrassed herself. And I mean, that was so unexpected that fortunately just put the shoe on again
and it wasn't smelling that bubbly so that it left the smell in the room. But apart from that, this impression of this being done just reminds as some sort of a flashback in your head that if it happened now, what can happen next? Fortunately, the party settled, and no need to further deal with the possibility of sniffing someone's shoes. Yet, yes, weird things happen.
They do. Weird things happen. That's true. And so, not knowing where to go, I'm gonna go. So, let me go. I'm an American mediator. Guns, we love our guns in the United States of America. And sometimes you might though have police officers or individuals who are in law enforcement involved in a mediation, and for some reason I have more often than not, they will come in uniform. They will come, and as police officers. Now that's inappropriate because you're in a position of authority, right? And there's always imbalances of power, but that's a different kind of imbalance that we have to be aware of. Now, but so in mediation, I've also noticed that at times, right? Not typically, there's nothing typical about this, but once in a blue moon, people will come with revealing clothing. And I think they do it purposely, right? And so when I'm in mediation, I do not like to see body parts. I don't want to see anything revealing. No cleavage. Forgive me for going here. But I remember this one time, this young woman, I want to be real careful. Forgive me, for saying this, but she had ample bosom, right? But she had forgive me, I'm so sorry, but this is the truth. She had a really low cut shirt, and so I made it a point not to look. I didn't want. I was uncomfortable, and so every time I talked to her, I made it a point. I'm looking at her in her eye. I am not going to in any way, be disrespectful. Now, because of that, what I did not see, because I absolutely refused to let my gaze go lower than her nose, she was wearing this chain, and around the chain, there was a detective's badge. Now, at some point, I saw the detective's badge. Now, as soon as I saw the detective's badge, now mediation started with me outside, right? This was an administrative mediation, and so they had seated them already. So when I had gotten in, I gave an opening statement and we started going. At some point, I see the badge. Now, as soon as I saw the badge, then I just kind of went like this, and I just want to see, do I see a weapon? Sure enough, there was a weapon, and I could see it, in the back. Whew. Now, because I wanted to be professional, I didn't want in any way, I was uncomfortable with cleavage. I didn't connect the two, and forgive me, I'm so sorry, but this is just the truth, right? And the gun was in mediation already, and I always make it a point, we do not start mediation if there are weapons. So then what do you do? What do you do when you find out that there's a weapon in mediation? And this has happened in another. So at that point, I said, you know what, now's a really great time, let's caucus, let's go to the restroom. And then I made sure that the one party left, and I asked them, just stay for a second if you don't mind. So I wanted them to be a part. And then at that moment, I very nicely and professionally said, listen, I'm so sorry. I didn't notice the gun. I'm going to need you to please take it to the sheriff's department, and you can leave it there. Police officers don't like doing that, but regardless, right? When you see it, then you stop it, and then you get rid of it, and then you proceed. So forgive me for going. But, interestingly, right, there are reasons that things might happen sometimes. But when you notice, you address it is the point. And thank you. And sorry for, speaking about that.
That's absolutely okay. So thank you guys. And at this time, we're going to wrap up. I guess one of the takeaways for today, guys, is a suggestion that anybody who's listening out there who might be interested in going to mediation or trying to see ways to settle their dispute with their significant other or whoever else, they need to know something. The stories that we're sharing today aren't intended to, make fun, make light, or even, shame anyone. They're intended partly to educate so that um, you know what not to do. Okay. Don't bring your guns to mediation. It doesn't end well. It doesn't help the situation.
Or
Okay.
knives, or scissors, or
Exactly. Or any kind of weapon for that matter. Mediation is a place where people go to try to resolve disputes, not pour gasoline and make things even worse or feel threatened. Don't wear such revealing clothing that it might mess with the mediator's head. Okay. Well, that's a joke. Don't, um, you know, come in uniform because a lot of times, like what Ty said is correct. It can create a power imbalance where one person is a position of authority and they can be perceived as trying to use that authority to have some kind of undue influence in the process. And the mediator's job is challenging enough, trying to help two sides that are opposites to come and negotiate a settlement agreement that works for both. Okay, so with that, Natalia, did you want to close us out? Share anything else?
Yes, I just want to say that being a mediator requires really cold blood, having an open heart and an open mind, and that's a lot. And it's really demanding from a person who is a mediator. So, the parties, you can expect that. The mediators, please try to be like that, and stay with us. Stay tuned for our next topics.
Thanks. All right, guys. Until next time.
stay well. Thank you.